So I just finished watching the third episode of Star Trek Strange New World Season 2, that episode being Tomorrow, and Tomorrow, and Tomorrow. So to begin with, this is a time travel episode. It's not my favorite time travel episode, it's not even my favorite of just Season 2 of Strange New Worlds, but it was a damn good episode in my opinion. And this episode was also a Lan episode. Everything in the story was in service of her character. So we haven't gotten too much in her character yet, but this really deals with her character and a little bit of the baggage that she is carrying. The episode opens with us learning about kind of her daily routine, and we can learn that she's not the closest with the crew. She really doesn't have that many friends, though. She and Una are friends. They kind of gloss over that in this episode. But I can understand why they chose not to address that part in this episode, because I think they really wanted to focus on more of, outside of, a professional friendship, but more of just, people to hang out with. Sure, Dr. Mbenga is a sparring partner but it's just a sparring partnership. It's not a friendship at all. And of course, with her and Una, lots of their friendship seems to be a professional friendship, that's all around, the work and all that. There was that one episode in season 1 where they tried to let loose, but that was the only time, there's not that much of, you don't get the sense that they will just, go to the ship's recreation room or bar and just hang out, drink, chat with other members of the crew. You don't get that sense. And definitely for Lan, that is definitely the case. She doesn't seem to have much of a social life, if you will. So it kind of setting up that she's isolated, that she's lonely, which does play a role in the episode. But at a certain point in the episode, she's just walking around along the corridor of the Enterprise, and somebody appears. We learn that it is a temporal agent, a time police, if you will, and he has a bird wound, and he hands on a device right before he disappears from the timeline, and the timeline changes. He tells Lan to go to the bridge, so where does she go? She goes to the bridge of the Enterprise. And guess who's the captain? Because it's not Pike. Yep, it's Captain Kirk. Kirk is now once again on the Enterprise, but besides her not being there, and not supposed to be there, and Pike not being there, and Kirk being there, there doesn't seem to be that much other changes on the Enterprise, besides the insignia. That is the very first thing I noticed, that Kirk's insignia was different. It was still a delta in some ways, but it was more of a diamond than the Starfleet delta is. But that is the first thing I took note of. And we find out it's the United Earth Fleet. Not the United Earth Starfleet, the United Earth Fleet. I'm sorry, but in Enterprise, it was still Starfleet. But the thing is, the point of divergence between these two timelines is before Star Trek Enterprise, before First Contact. And now, at this point, we don't know what the divergence is. And Lan and Kirk and Chogman, they both get sent back to present-day Canada, Toronto to be specific. And I do actually like that. We finally got a Star Trek episode where they go back in time, and they don't go to United States, whether that be California, New York, or some other place. I am glad that they went someplace different. But it does create some more questions in the future, but we'll get to that point later on in the review. So they gotta figure out what's going on, and Kurt's reluctant to do anything to change the timeline, because he wants to keep the timeline he's used to, while Lan is like, well, my timeline is gone, I need to restore it. So there's some conflict there, and there is one thing that eventually, when they're talking, that gets Kurt to agree to figure out what changed, and therefore to work to, change it back, if you will, to restore the timeline to what Lan remembers. And that's when Kirk hears that his brother, Sam, was still alive in Lan's timeline, because apparently in his timeline, George Samuel Kirk did not survive some kind of event. So he changed his mind for a personal reason, which is very interesting to take a note of. So as the episode goes on, there's other things going on, like I mentioned earlier that this was a Lan episode, not a Kirk episode. And unlike like many Kirk episodes, there's a love story. The thing is, Kirk is not the romantic lead in this. Lan is. Lan and Kirk this alternate timeline Kirk do seem to fall in love very much. They have a kiss and all that. But the thing is I kind of like this because it's a change up, because yeah, Cook is a bit of a ladies' man. He's been presented in all forms of media, but what I really like in here is the story is not being told from his perspective to service him. No, it's being told from Lauren's perspective. She finally found someone she could connect with. I mentioned earlier, how the episode set up that Lauren did not have that many close friendships, people she could just hang out with. And here she is hanging out with Kurt, falling off and finding someone who does not prejudge her because of her name. That should have been the first sign she had that something was amiss in the timeline, that Kirk had no knowledge of what Noonien Singh meant. That should have been her first clue. But the thing is, there was another event going on. The event that happened both timelines bridged the destruction, which turns out was caused by the Romulans. And the Romulans are involved in this episode a lot because, well, the technology needed, but they encountered a conspiracy theorist who has a picture of a Romulan warlord, which could recognize as not Spock, not Lon. Though Spock was in this episode as a Vulcan captain in the alternate timeline. And also just himself in the regular timeline, but that's not really a major part of the episode, just a fun thing there, and I used my little gaff there to mention it. But this conspiracy theorist she has a lot of crazy conspiracy theories. Really right about one specific thing, that being having that picture of the Romulan warlord. Of course, as we find out later in the episode, that was deliberate on her part. Because, well, we find out, we're going to jump ahead, that she's a Romulan temporal agent who's trying to prevent the Federation from forming. And she's doing that, or she, or at least another Romulan, was responsible for the bridge's destruction, but she's trying to kill Khan Noonien Singh. And if her mission succeeds, the Federation never formed. And that's why Cook does not recognize Noonien Singh, because Khan never became a tyrant in his timeline. So this episode actually does deal with one of the most common hypothetical time travel questions. If you could go back in time and kill Hitler, would you do so? This episode addresses it by saying, if you do that, something worse may happen, whether it be in the immediate future or in the distant future. The episode basically settles on the idea, it's best just to let history, that the timeline continues the way it has always happened and the way it is happening, rather than try to change it from the designated course. That's very much a little deterministic, if you will, but Star Trek time travel episodes have always kind of that deterministic mentality about the past, and we do that as well because it already happened from our perspective. But how would we feel if someone from the future came and say, you need to change how you're doing this, otherwise this will happen? We might have some different interpretations. Kind of wish that would be addressed a little more in Star Trek, but at least they did, have an answer to the question. And this episode, and that's also why Lon was chosen by that one temporal agent, because she's related to Khan, being a descendant. And probably he figured that anyone else he could randomly pick probably would kill Khan, but she has a personal interest in not killing Khan, because if Khan's killed, guess what happens to her? She's probably not going to be in the timeline anymore. But that's also why probably she wasn't on the Enterprise or any other fleet, United Earth ship, because of that reason. And though, weirdly enough, in this on timeline with no Khan, Earth is actually in worse condition than it is with Khan existing. Probably something to do with the Romans, because this Kirk was not born in Iowa. No, he was born in space. He lived in space. The real Kirk was born in Iowa, so just another subtle change there. And of course, the new engineer, Patty, she makes an appearance in this episode because she's been on there for a long time. And Lauren goes to her to get some engineering advice, though this is before she becomes an engineer, though this might also be why she becomes an engineer. And they get a watch that they can use to track some radiation to help locate the reactor that they think is going to be destroyed as a part of the change of the timeline. Well, yeah, that's technically correct, but the reason the reactor was destroyed was not to destroy the reactor, but for the Romulan agent to kill Khan. And ends up being they do stop the Romulan agent. The Kirk is killed, or the ordinary Kirk, because the real Kirk is still alive, and Lon saves Khan, And you can tell this is hard for her because, again, she knows who Khan is, and probably the only thing that's keeping her from doing it herself is because her own self-preservation, but also the idea that, well, this is the way the timeline went, so we really shouldn't be changing it. So that's essentially the main thing of the episode, but the episode ends. Lon goes back to the Enterprise bridge to make sure everything is normal, and then she goes to her quarters where she's met by another temporal agent of the Department of Temporal Investigations. They're back, and unlike in Deep Space Nine, they're actually time traveling now. Now, this is obviously from the future, the perspective of Deep Space Nine, because they have time travel abilities, while in Deep Space Nine they were only bureaucracy, only keeping files and records and all that. But I do appreciate that they popped up. This also connects them nicely with the temporal agents from the Temporal Cold War and Enterprise, and then also the Time Police, and all that, the time shift relativities that we saw in Star Trek Voyager. So connecting all that stuff up. So time travel is a mess and all that. There's no way of going around that in Star Trek. Time travel is a mess. But time travel also explains a lot of the continuity errors, if you will, because the eugenics world keeps on getting pushed back. This episode is set in the present day, yet the eugenics world, according to the original series, happened in 1992. But also another thing to take a note of is that Roman temporal agent says that she's been trying to kill Khan since 1992. So either she keeps on doing things that are changing the timeline, pushing the eugenics wars back, or there were unreliable records, so she went to the wrong point. But the thing is, time travel has evolved and seems to be messing with a lot of stuff time-wise, especially in Star Trek. But one kind of other thing to kind of note on that, going back to the temporal agent, is she takes the device back from Lon, but tells her so that she can't talk to anyone about it. Well, she's just been through a lot. She fell in love with Kirk and watched Kirk die, and the Kirk that's in the Prime timeline that has no knowledge of this, so she can't talk with him about it. Can't talk with anyone about it. Maybe Peli, but who knows if she even remembers everything that happened at this point. But that's like the only one she can talk to. But she does call Kirk just because no one probably see if he has any memory of it. He doesn't. But then, and it sounds like they might meet up at some point in the future. But the thing is the episode ends with her crying because she has a lot to deal with, and because of what the temporal agent told her, she has no support at all. She has nobody to talk to about her experience, nobody to offer her a shoulder to cry on. She's in this by herself. This is not going to be good for Lon's mental health. I have a feeling this is going to be a continuing thread we see in the episode, because who can she talk to? Maybe Peli, because Peli was involved. But Peli didn't know much. Probably just remember two strange people popping in, one looking vaguely like somebody like Lon, and that's probably about it. But that is pretty much the episode. I do very much like what the episode did. I liked how the Roman temporal agent was only pretending to be conspiracy theorists to help sow division. How everything they were doing was essentially sowing division, trying to prevent the formation of the Federation. And I do like how the episode does address some very hard topics that people like to throw around, and there's, from our perspective, no good answer. But when you really think about things, like if you go changing the past, you can make things worse and not better. The Roman agent actually had mentioned how they run simulations. Why did that kind of remind me of the for the Year of Hell story arc, 2 episodes part in Star Trek Voyager with the Kremlin, I think, Imperium, where there's this one guy who's obsessed with trying to get the timeline just perfect, restore the timeline just perfectly, and there's always one thing never bringing back. This one, so think of that again. In that episode of Voyager, somebody was trying to change the timeline to get it just right in their opinion, but they could never quite manage. And this episode shows that, yeah, you can change the time, you can stop a tyrannical dictator, but that will change history, and that the present day may not be what you want. So, some food for thought there. But that is where I'm going to end this review. I do hope you enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts on the episode in the comment section down below. And thank you for watching, and live long and prosper. Thank you for watching this video. I do hope you enjoyed it. If you did, feel free to like, upvote, and share the video. Also consider subscribing and following the channel if you haven't done so yet, and to ring that bell on YouTube to get notified of when new videos release. The link tree in the description links to all my social media. Check it out if you are interested, and once again, thank you for watching, and as always, have a good day, a good night, wherever you are. May the force be with you, always.